It's Thursday, so I'm lucky to have Chuck Todd because if it's Thursday, it's usually Chuck Todd on the Hugh Hewitt Show. If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press with Chuck Todd, and it's every day at 1 and 5 if you're watching MSNBC. Good morning, Chuck. Is everyone in the Todd universe healthy?
So far, it's like the movie Groundhog Day, right? Instead of getting a little better at things, feels like we're all getting a little bit worse, right? But
I agree.
We're good.
I agree. You and I both know about the Rose Garden campaigns, and we both know our history about front porch campaigns. We're watching a basement campaign, and I don't think a basement campaign can work. Do you?
I don't know, and the reason I don't know is because of Trump. I mean, I do believe this is. I don't know how this isn't a referendum on him and a referendum on pandemic recovery. So under those circumstances, do I think under this lone scenario, could a basement campaign work? It could. I mean, Joe Biden is the perfect test case for whether this would work, right? I mean, he doesn't inspire more enthusiasm at times when he's on the campaign trail. The idea, of Joe Biden is sits well with people, and in some ways, running McKinley's 1896 front porch campaign might work for him.
Let's talk about. I think that the little basement shots. If he ran a front porch campaign and they had reporters out there, it would demonstrate energy and life and vitality.
Social distancing, being able to yell questions.
Yeah,
got to yell back.
Like the Rose Garden.
Right. He might be better off. He might be better off taking a few outdoor socially distanced questions. Yeah.
I really think so, Chuck. I think it looks so listless that it appears without energy because, as you know, broadcasters draw energy from people in their studios, from green rooms, from activity.
It's so lonely. It's so funny you say that. Sometimes, I mean, look, we all need energy. You need people around you sometimes. Basically, I got my two dogs, and hopefully they can give me that feedback when I'm done. It is the weirdest feeling when you're like, okay, empty reaction in the room. Yeah.
For 10 years, I did the nightly news for PBS in L.A., and the producer, John Reisman, last thing, he's dead now. He's a great young man. He fell off of a mountain, unfortunately. He would tell me, last thing before we went on, energy. And the way you get energy is from people. Unless you're in the radio business, you have Dwayne yelling at you in your ear. And I just think that Joe Biden isn't getting enough energy from his people.
Look, I don't disagree. I just don't think it's, there's a few things here. Not one. I think this is going to be I think we're going to, people that want the European style election, we're going to get it. Because I just don't think the public is interested in a campaign yet. I think the public generally isn't fully invested in a campaign until they know what the hell's happening with their own lives in the next 3 months.
Okay, that's fair. I want to turn to the PPP. I have Brad Dinsmore coming on in a little bit. He is the president of Pacific Mercantile Bank. They lent the Nixon Foundation, which I run, our PPP. They got it done. They've saved tens of thousands of jobs. That is running out of money today or tomorrow. I think Speaker Pelosi and Minority Leader Schumer are running a grave risk, Chuck, if they do not appropriate this money. How do you analyze this?
I think any side that is on the side that looks like they're holding up money, I think is bad politics. I think that the Democrats are genuine and in their sticking up to the governors here. I think that's what they believe they're doing. I believe they think that Cuomo and Hogan are basically lobbying on their side on this, right? The national governors are like, we need our money too. So I think that's what Democrats are calculating, that this is if you look at it through one eye, it looks like they're holding up small business money. If you look at it through the other one, hey, governors are asking for their money. So I think that's what the Democrats are calculating. I don't know if that's coming to fruition now. I think that the small business money issue is something that's more front and center with the public than the issue of reimbursing the states. And so I think that on a perception marker here, sort of your short-term politics, I think the Republicans have the upper hand.
You're never wrong. This is why I have Chuck on every week. You're never wrong on the hotline stuff, and this is what's happening. They've misjudged again. Chuck Schumer did this before on a shutdown, and they have miscalculated the impact of people getting laid off.
Here's the thing. It's really interesting here, and they've each, I think, at times almost miscalculated, right? I think when some House Republicans wanted to mess around with it was like, don't do that. And one of these things, this is one of those where Schumer and Pelosi, I think, could basically give them this, hold the shit, and then come back and be more powerful when they come back for their ass in 3 weeks.
Absolutely.
This is why I think it's one of those. This is something that I always never scratch my head about Trump. Trump is always way too short-term thinking when it comes to his political strategies. Everything is always about getting him out of today, and then he worries about tomorrow. This is one of those cases. It feels like that somebody isn't thinking slightly more long-term here.
Now, I want to play for you what I think has been the most important exchange in the Rose Garden since this crisis began. It was between your friend John Robertson, and I don't know John, but I know you've known him for a long time, of Fox News yesterday, has this exchange, which I want the audience to hear, cut number 18.
Better. John, go ahead.
Mr. President, multiple sources are telling Fox News today that the United States government now has high confidence that while the coronavirus is a naturally occurring virus, it emanated from a virology lab in Wuhan, that because of lax safety protocols, an intern was infected, who later infected her boyfriend, and then went to the wet market in Wuhan, where it began to spread. Does that correspond with what you have heard from officials?
Well, I don't want to say that, John, but I will tell you more and more we're hearing the story. And we'll see. When you say multiple sources, now there's a case where you can use the word sources, but we are doing a very thorough examination of this horrible situation that happened. Go ahead, please.
In your many conversations with President Xi, Mr. President, did you ever discuss with him State Department concerns about lax safety protocols that had been reported to the State Department from the embassy in Beijing about that laboratory?
I don't want to discuss what I talked to him about the laboratory. I just don't want to discuss it. It's inappropriate.
Now, Chuck Todd, you have spent a lot more time talking with the president since he's become president than I have. I've got a little experience. You've got a lot of experience. I think John Roberts here whines, he shoots, he scores. But would you unpack what you heard in that exchange?
Well, look, it's a little more complicated than just you can't take that. Some of us can't take the exchange on face value because we know that the government. There's been some folks in the government that have been pushing the story for a couple of weeks with a lot of us. But it's been interesting. Nobody's wanted to go on the record. And even with what Fox reported, nobody went on the record, right? It's blind sources. Nobody will go on the record on this. So this is why it's been sort of, and the biggest thing that I was told is there's still, and you heard it in the president there. Did you bring it up with Xi? I don't want to talk about what I brought up with Xi. There is a division about whether if the United States has this evidence. This is like go to the floor of the United Nations with it type of evidence, right? That's a big bombshell, right?
Hadn't thought of that.
That is right. That is.
I hadn't thought of that.
Bombshell.
Yep.
But
that's
they don't
interesting.
want to do it because there's a divide, and there's also a reality here. You hear the president talk about how much money to farmers China is promised. You've heard how many PPE we still have to get from China. So there apparently is a division about how aggressively to level these accusations at the Chinese. So anyway, that's what I'm telling you. There's a lot more layers to this than just the accusation itself. The accusation itself is a big deal, and I think that's one part of this. But what's been interesting is the division about how hard the U.S. government is going to level this accusation, and I don't think this final decision's been made.
That makes me think of course, Colin Powell's presentation to the UN about Saddam's non-existent weapons of mass destruction. You don't go to the UN unless you're absolutely certain of what you're going to do if you're in the United States now. But you also don't go with the world's only other superpower, right? You don't do it with them.
Well, unless you have it, right? You better have it. And that's the other thing. You say, you may suspect, you may have, but once bitten, twice shy. So I assume that's another hesitance here in that it does feel as if everything I understand about this story, it's still circumstantial. We don't have, all of this is circumstantial stuff.
30 seconds, Chuck. If it's true, does it not tilt the axis of the world superpower competition?
Oh, I think it's devastating, China. I think it's devastating, China. I mean, it's one of those. It's a generational black eye.
100% correct.
Yeah.
Chuck Todd, stay healthy. If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press. We will be watching, and every day 1 at 5 on Meet the Press on MSNBC. Thank you, Chuck.